Welcome to In Studio from Simply Timeless. I'm your host, Jay Daniels. Recently, I had the pleasure of meeting with saxophonist Vincent Herring. He invited me to his Bronx home for an afternoon of lunch and conversation. There were many stories shared, including one about Lou Donaldson. You'll hear that one and others as I talk with Vincent about his latest album, Bird at 100, a tribute to the music of Charlie Parker. To tell his story, here's Vincent Herring.
I started playing in 1974 or 75, and so that was maybe 20 years after Bird died. If we think how close that was, American history is so short anyway.
Yeah.
Today is 2020. I remember 2000. I remember 1985. I remember all of that. It's really not that long ago. So when I was growing up, and I heard Charlie Parker, his technical facility was amazing. It really was amazing. And if you figure before he became super popular, the improvisational style of the day, even before Lester Young, let's go Benny Carter. Well, that was just a little bit before, but the style of improvisation, let's go Louis Armstrong. The style of improvisation, interpreting a Great American Songbook, all the diminished passing chords and things like this. So all of a sudden, and also improvisation was more arpeggiated. It was a different style of improvisation. And all of a sudden he comes along, makes this linear, these slight chord substitutions, the reinterpretation of this stuff, not the wide vibrato, but he comes on just plain sound. It's like, it was innovative. I could hear and feel it immediately, and his technical facility at the time. But I will tell you a story. Some years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, I was doing a concert in New Jersey at the Institute for Research. And what it is, it's a private university that it's a graduate school that you can only attend by invitation. And, they came to one of my concerts. I was playing at the Village Vanguard, and the guy said, I want to hire your band to come play at our school. It's okay. And so when I was walking in the Institute, there's all of these statues, all these famous people. And there's a statue of Einstein. And I said, wow, I bet he was the smartest professor here. Guy stops walking, turns around, looks at me with such a scowl, and he just like, no, he was just merely the most well-known. Einstein's wife did most of his simple calculations to help him with his theoretical part. Because she was great at math, he was a mediocre student. At best, he was average in his math class and his pursuit in school. But what separates him and makes him special, the bulk of the public, including me, have no idea what it is. It's his creativity and his imagination. And if you ask any high-end, physics, math teacher, that's what they'll tell you eventually about Einstein. Because as far as the practical, technical things goes, but that's what's special about him. And I go back to Charlie Parker. So now, where, it's sacrilegious for me to say, man, I play saxophone as good as Charlie Parker. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but it's in the ballpark. But it doesn't matter, because that's, okay, people have caught up, but the part that makes him special is his imagination and his creativity. Innovation is special. I wish I were innovative in my thought process. Something that can't be forced. But that's a level of creativity few get to. So yes, Charlie Parker's innovation and things that stood out about him at the time, it was his technical facility. People have caught up. Am I impressed when I hear Charlie Parker play the saxophone? Not like I was in my youth. And it's not so much about I was youthful. It's not about that. It is that music and techniques and everything has caught up. But you can't catch up with imagination and creativity. That's not something that is taught. It's simulated, but not taught. So here's a guy that created an original vocabulary and an original way of interpreting the music. So that part was what's special to me about Charlie Parker. So do I find his technical facility great? Yeah, it is. But is it exceptional in 2020? No, not anymore. It is among the top for sure, but is it exceptional? No. You have John Coltrane, thought of to be technical, incredible master. As hard as it is for me to say, and with my elders, they would kill me for saying this. Michael Brecker played the saxophone better than anybody I ever heard in my life. Period. And I love Coltrane. And Michael would be the first to tell you that as well as he plays the saxophone, it's nothing compared to Coltrane. And that doesn't mean on a technical level. He's the same thing. It's creativity. It's innovation. So he plays the saxophone physically, technically incredible. I mean, just unbelievable. The best I've ever heard. But that, in terms of, and people did equate it with, some of the historical jazz greats, wrongly so. But it's one of those things where the technical side is equivalent or superior, but the creativity and the innovation, that's always the king. That's why Louis Armstrong is still relevant. That's why Charlie Parker is still relevant. That's why John Coltrane is still relevant. Miles Davis is still relevant. That's their real contribution, even though people cite other reasons for their historical greatness. It's really their creativity. Really, it's not as sexy sounding as, Miles played the trumpet, but no, that's not it. And because you can practice hard enough and develop your technical facility, which people have and do. I was judging the Thelonious Monk competition, where people send in tapes and they need you to get it down from 400 tapes down to 20 or 15, I forget. And it was me and two other saxophone players, and we're listening all day. And the big difference between now and when I was coming up, so many players are so good. If you had taken 100 players when I was growing up, let's say even 1,000, you would have one special player. Then you'd have maybe 20 like super good. And then after that, they'd drop off. Now you have 5 to 10 special players. Incredible. And then you have like 100 like really good players. It's just very different. When I was growing up, I was perceived as a special talent, rightfully so, according to my peer group at the time. Not the best, but had some special potential. And that's, it was like, when I was hired by Nat Adderley, it was based on potential. Like he liked me very much as a person, and he appreciated my enthusiastic love for the music, and that's, that was partially why he hired me. In my opinion, here years later, I'm reinterpreting. But surely, that wasn't, there were other saxophone players that were good players, but at the time, I was actually pretty promising. But a thing about Cannonball Adderley, when he comes along, people always cite him as being the heir apparent to Charlie Parker. That was not Cannonball's thing. Cannonball was into Benny Carter, and then later Charlie Parker. So when you hear him play, he had the sophistication and the basic harmonic interpretations of Charlie Parker, but he was so much broader in other stuff, other influences. And that's what's great about the art. We bring in these outside influences, but we all also have a core base that we learn from, and continues to grow the music. America is very young, and we've had some good contributions to society, but essentially, European classical music, that comes from Europe. Our major contributions have been the American songbook. That's a big deal. It really is. And the Afro-American experience, bringing jazz to prominence. Now, it belongs to everyone. It really does, because now you have white artists and Japanese artists and everybody interpreting this music very, very well, And historically, like I told you how much I love Chet Baker.
Yeah.
So the music may have come from one particular segment of the population, but the music grows beyond that. And in Charlie Parker's day, he had great admiration for some of the major composers that had come before him, because he was starting to hear and understand the structure of the music. And so, Stravinsky was someone that he was fascinated with, and he wanted to learn more about. So now comes, this type of era where young kids are growing up and they have a chance to study all of this stuff and really understand. Imagine what if Bird had a chance to study the stuff, a certain kind of way. Yeah. Who knows? So now we have the privilege to hear Charlie Parker when we're really young. When I worked with Nat Adderley, musicians would call me and ask me if I had any Cannonball Adderley tapes, VHS tapes. And I did. And I'd go, yeah. And they're like, man, is there any chance I can see that or hear it? I've been hearing about it. Well, maybe on, the 15th, it's like, it was a big deal that I had all of these tapes. And there was a collector at the time, and based, I think, in New York or New Jersey, named David Shertock. And he had a collection of all kind of jazz greats. And he gave Nat, all the stuff. And so Nat calls me up and he says, yeah, this guy Dave Shertock gave me all this stuff. Come down and check it out and see what it is. So I brought another video tape machine to copy all the stuff. So I had this collection. Now, you go on YouTube, you could be a 8-year-old kid in the middle of Pennsylvania or Utah, and you pull this stuff up, and you want to slow it down and learn it by ear. Oh, no problem. And so there's an explosion in the level of musicianship. I'm shocked at how good some of my incoming students are. Way better than me when I came into school. Just wow. It's a very interesting period. They're lacking in other ways, but the raw talent and skill level of musicians today is very, very high. And so, like I say, Charlie Parker survives, and his image survives because of his creativity and his innovation. That is what survives. Of course, they always say, "Oh, his technical and this and that." As a professional, I'm telling you what it is.
Yeah.
And that creativity and innovative things, it survives and it will continue. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to the music and where it goes, because these kids are so technically advanced these days. It's going to be interesting, and like you figure, when Charlie Parker never recorded anything that wasn't in 4/4. And now you have guys improvising, composing, writing in all of these weird meters. And not that I like it, because usually I don't. But I do recognize the technical aspect of it, and I respect what it takes to be able to do that. I'm able to feel, play something and feel aggressive in the time and take liberties and push above this and play over the bar line. And if I'm playing something with a lot of compound meters, I have to play carefully, and it's very different for me.
Yes.
I have students that can feel as aggressive as I feel in 4/4. They can feel that aggressive across all of these multimeters. It's incredible.
I've been playing piano for 25 years. I still cannot do timeout, or not time, take 5. I still cannot get into the groove and play that comfortably.
Well, okay, so it's that's just a matter of doing it, because it's just 1 meter, so it's not so bad. But when you're changing meters, you got 5/4, and then all of a sudden 3/4 bar, and then all of a sudden, it's like, wow. And these kids.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
In the last few minutes that we have, you talk about the things that survive even years after Bird's passing in the mid-50s. Suppose there hadn't been a Charlie Parker, and he hadn't done what he did. How do you think that might have changed the jazz landscape?
Interesting, because there is a little bit of a gray area. There's Dizzy Gillespie coming along, and they're both usually credited with being the fathers of bebop at that time. And I don't know. I really don't. There's a weird thing. Sonny Stitt comes along playing kind of like Charlie Parker, Is it because he heard Charlie Parker and he absorbed him that quick? I guess. I don't know. So I don't know where we would be. It's like if Graham Bell hadn't invented this. Well, we know that there was Tesla, whose talents were being suppressed by Graham Bell. And so who knows where we'd be. It might be more advanced, You never know. So, but I am grateful that Charlie Parker did exist, and the contributions that he made to the music are are incredible. And even today, even with my super musician students, um, still Bird is still relative. Some of them resist in the beginning, but they know at some point they have to understand and go through Charlie Parker, or at least the way I like to teach and like people to learn is to absorb all of these styles, and eventually, with always thinking of developing my own voice, and eventually you'll get to that. Like that project, my project that has those three generations of saxophone players. Gary Bartz, who's in his 80s. Bobby Watson, who Bobby must be getting near 70. He must be, or he is 70. I'm not sure even. And then I'm in my 50s. And three different experiences with Charlie Parker. Gary Bartz, of course, was able to hear him and that was someone that was obviously older, but accessible to him. When I first came to New York, when I was hanging out at a place called Barry Harris's Jazz Cultural Theater, there was these old guys out front. Hey, is that a saxophone? I said, yes. I said, you ever heard of Charlie Parker? I said, yeah. You ain't never heard Bird. I said, yeah, why are these guys messing with me, right? And I said, well, I know 25 Bird solos, and they just fell out laughing. And they said, yeah, but you never heard Bird. You don't know Charlie Parker. And I was like, why are these guys messing with me? Turns out it was Lou Donaldson, who's old is Lou now? Lou's got to be in his 90s. It was Lou Donaldson, Jim Harrison, who's like just Jim Harrison is just an old time guy who was around the music, maybe booked some people at the time or something. Jim's probably in his 90s or late 80s, and that was them messing with me. But the thing that's funny is now here I am, 55, and haven't had certain musical experiences, and I know that if you never heard Art Blakey play the drums live and hear his press roll and his ensemble sound, you have no idea. And yes, there are plenty of recordings, great recordings. You have no idea. If you didn't hear Freddie Hubbard live and really have a chance to really feel what he was like, you have no idea. I understand what those old guys meant when they told me I didn't know Bird. I understand what they meant. When I used to study with Phil Woods, Phil used to talk about Bird all the time. And it's interesting because, you listen to Phil play and you didn't think to yourself, it's like, man, he has his own sound and interpretation of the music. But he knows it's coming out of Charlie Parker. He knows it's based on that. It really is. And so imagine that he is able to play like he plays, does I Love You Just the Way You Are solo. That's first take. The change is written down on a dinner napkin. Concert changes. No problem. And that's coming out of Charlie Parker. He's able to do that, so lyrical. One of the characteristics about Charlie Parker that kind of gets lost is Bird was about playing great, beautiful notes. Now one thing that I don't like about some of the kids today, but not just kids, but even my peer age professionals, it's like trying to play stuff, harmonic stuff across chord changes, as opposed to just playing creating melodies and creating lyrical content. Yeah. So, it's kind of a wide open world there. And like the old guys say, if you didn't hear it live, you don't really know what it sounds like. So, with respect to Charlie Parker, I never heard him live. I can feel his impact. I can tell from a number of people I study with and a number of older guys or people that are still on the planet that revere him so much. Like I work with Jimmy Cobb, who's a drummer. And Jimmy, how old is Jimmy now? James is old too, man. So to hear me say something like, like I could play saxophone on a technical level like Charlie Parker, it would kill me. Like, what? Because, from their perspective, are you nuts? I'm just being real. I'm telling you. The thing that I can't do is be an innovator, or it hasn't happened all these years, and his level of creativity. That's what separates him from us. That's what separates him from me, or Gary Bartz, or Bobby Watson, or the girl upstairs, Irena. That's what separates us. What separates Michael Brecker from being on a Coltrane's level. It's not technical, because technically Mike is incredible, but it's that creativity and the innovation. That's what separates Coltrane and makes him a cut above. And that's no, discredit to Michael Brecker, because if Mike was still alive, he'd tell you without question the same thing. And but the music continues to grow. Like I said, we're a very young country, and our music is very new. Even though we think of it as old, it's very new. And the music will continue to grow. Not necessarily for the best, but it's going to continue to grow. So we'll see what happens.
Vincent Herring, our in-studio guest this week from Simply Timeless. The album is called Bird at 100, and it features Vincent along with saxophonist Bobby Watson and Gary Bartz. It's available from Smoke Sessions. More information on Vincent's music and tour schedule is available at vincentherring.com. Until we meet again, I'm Jay Daniels, thanking you for joining us in studio.